on in, everyone. Come on in because we are back for Netflix, The Ultimatum, and we are reviewing episodes. Is this six, seven, and eight? Six, seven, and eight, I believe, because we did all the way up into five. Then they dropped six, seven, and eight. So that's what we're reviewing here today. And just like my thumbnail says, y'all should leave them. Leave these men. Leave these men, especially Aria and Zaina. They shouldn't be. And I'm going to go through why I think that they should leave the relationships. Um, but before we get to actually Zaina and Arya, I'm going to start with Sandy because I'm going to tell you something about Sandy. Um, I know when she first came on the show, the little stuff she was doing with JR, I really wasn't a big fan of it. I'm still not a fan of what she was doing. But I've learned some things about Sandy. I think I learned about Sandy through Nick. Let's just say that. I really actually learned about Sandy through Nick because once I found out what a mess Nick was, I had to start thinking differently about Sandy and like what type of woman would be with a Nick. Because Nick is an emotional wreck. He's an emotional wreck. He said that his ex would say the same thing about him. And he said that once he gets comfortable with a lady, he becomes even more of an emotional wreck. I guess the more he becomes attached, the more of a wreck he becomes. So what Sandy is dealing with in Nick, it's obvious that this is who Nick is, and he's been this way with a lot of other women. He goes and gets this tattoo, and he's so discombobulated, so all over the place. He sends the wrong tattoo to his tattoo artist, and so the tattoo artist tattoos the wrong thing. I mean, at first I was thinking about what a F up. Jeez Louise, that's ridiculous. But then when we later find out that the same thing he mistakenly got a tattoo over was actually what JR has on his hands, I started to think, is it really an F up? Or did he really do it on purpose because he really was trying to be more like JR? I know JR mocks him alike. I don't like what JR does to Nick. But in this moment, I said, what are the odds that he liked two tattoos? So even if we say he's not copying JR, here's what we got to know. Because JR admitted that he was waffling between two tattoos. That's what he said. He was waffling between two tattoos. He eventually decided to go with the love one, but in the end, he ended up giving his tattoo artist the one about the whole fortitude or whatever it is. The fortitude is the one that JR had. So that's the one he ended up copying. So the fact that it was even part of his top two, the fact that he had a tattoo as part of his top two, I'm suspect about it. I think Nick is very unstable, and my suggestion to Sandy would be to leave him. I know we kept calling Sandy and JR Hall Pass. And I'm not going to say that's not what they were looking at it as. I think they were. They were looking for a break. They definitely were looking for a break. But along the way, I think that Sandy did learn something. I think she got to see what it's like to be with a man where he doesn't emotionally drain you. Because JR has another set of issues. He's not the same issues as Nick. He's not emotionally draining. But he's got other issues, which we'll get to him later. But it's a different type of issue. And I think that gave Sandy a little bit of a break. You know, Dave was telling this, I mean, not Dave, Nick was telling the story that he knew right away that something was going on with Dave and Vanessa before they left the show, because immediately they were sort of getting together, right? So he already knew something was up. So him being in this experiment alone, I think was also a good thing because it really exposed Nick. It really did expose him. And, you know, he's being lied to by Sandy. Sandy's definitely lying to JR because she told JR that, I mean, she told Nick, everyone said they'd only kissed once. We've all seen more than one kiss on screen, so we already knew it was a lie. So we knew that they were lying when they said there was one kiss. And now they're trying to confess and say, okay, we did have two kisses, but the reality of it is they've had way more than two kisses. I mean, these episodes alone, they kissed at least a couple of times in the bed on their final nights. So this idea that they've only kissed once or twice is a lie. So Sandy has been lying to Nick all along, which goes back when I say I've learned a lot about Sandy, because what I'll say is why is Sandy with a Nick? And it's the same reason I say why Sandy bonded with JR. And I think Sandy looks at herself as a fixer. I don't know where it comes from because this show really doesn't go into the backgrounds of these couples, which maybe if they did that a little bit more, we would find out more about them. But Sandy has a problem where she likes to fix men. And she was on a quest, she's still on a quest to fix Nick, and she was on a quest to fix JR too, in different types of ways. Nick, he's emotionally a wreck. JR, she was trying to pry JR open, make him become more emotionally vulnerable because he was coming out of a past where he says his wife cheated on him. But either way, Sandy looks to implant herself in men's lives so that she can fix him. The problem with that is it's a heavy, heavy toll on Sandy. You can see it. You can see her cracking under the pressure. You could see the amount of weight, but really it's all because she's just putting herself in that position. I think Sandy should leave Nick because I don't think that Nick is healthy for her. I think in some ways it satisfies her because like I said, I think she's a fixer, but in the long run, it's going to be damaging to her. You know, they had a lot of conversations talking about when they were first coming on the show. They didn't want any boundaries. Sandy said, I wouldn't have come on the show if we were coming on the show with boundaries. And so how can you now be upset that I pecked JR on the lips? I know they keep saying they pecked each other, and I still believe they did more than peck. I do. I think they did more than peck, and I think they're trying to have a united front to say that they didn't do more. And the reason why I think that they did more than peck, because I think they both caught feelings. I think both Sandy and JR caught real feelings. I know we're trying to call it a hall pass, but I think that they really caught real feelings. But I think what they're going to grapple with is how do we turn that into a real relationship? And I think there's so many other parts of them that don't work together. There are a lot of parts of JR and Sandy that don't work together. But I think there's a part of them that worked real well together. And the part for Sandy was the part that she didn't have to be the emotional leader constantly in this relationship with JR. There was that scene when JR and they were in the bed on the final night. And I mean, Sandy was almost like the big spoon. She has to coddle and hug and really just sort of spoon and swaddle Nick. It's like he's a baby. And I think what Sandy liked when she was with JR was that JR was standing up for her. Remember, JR was the one fighting for Nick and saying, leave Sandy alone. Stop being an emotional burden on Sandy. Stop calling her. And I think what Sandy liked was there was someone fighting for her to relieve her of this pressure of being the emotional burden. But yet she still runs back to it. You see, just like Nick said, well, wait a minute, Sandy, you were calling me too. She goes, well, yeah, one time or two times. But the point of the matter is she was doing it. In a lot of ways, Sandy doesn't like the pressure, but she's drawn to it. She likes to fix people. And I don't know where that came from. It's definitely going to probably be somewhere from her past, but we don't know much about her past, so we don't know where it came from. JR, he did a lot to really try to make Nick feel bad. I didn't like that about him. Even when he was talking about the fact that hey, they get back, everyone's sitting around talking about their trial marriages. And he reveals to Nick that, oh yeah, I met Sandy's parents and they even invited me to Christmas dinner. I might do that. First of all, that's just mean and hurtful to say it to Nick in front of his face. And it was really mean and hurtful to Zaina. But as we know, he doesn't really care about Zaina too much. We're going to get to that. But like I said before, Zaina is a placeholder for JR. Zaina is a safe space for JR, a woman that he doesn't have to worry about necessarily cheating on him. But she's really not the woman that he wants. She's really not the woman that he wants. And I think the difference between JR being with Sandy and JR being with Zaina is that Zaina feels like an ulterior motive. She feels like an ulterior motive because although Zaina does a lot of things for JR, even when we saw her with Scotty, she was doing a lot of wife things. I said about that. You almost get the feeling from Zaina that she's doing it for the purpose of that person wanting to marry them. That's what it feels like. Like it's almost like I'm doing these things, these wife duties, so you will see me as a wife and you'll want to get married to me. It's almost like she's doing it just to get what she wants, right? So now I kind of question, is it really Zaina? Is Zaina really this person? Because if Zaina was really this caretaking person, I'm kind of wondering why JR had a hole in him that Sandy was able to fill. You see, because Zaina comes off as a real caretaker. She's like this wife. I'll do all these wife duties. But yet, if it were real and authentic, why is there a hole in JR? Because I think a part of Zaina is performative. I think she performs as a wife because she wants to be a wife. But what I'm starting to question about Zaina, is it really part of her soul? And I think when JR met Sandy, what he ran into was a person who really does like to give to another person, even at the detriment of herself, because that's who Sandy is. Sandy strikes me as the person who's giving of herself, whether it be her time, her energy, or her body. Let's count them all, to other people in order to better those people, although it's draining for her. Because what I want to know is, why is Sandy still with JR? I'm not JR, with Nick. Why is she still with Nick? And then what I think is, I think that she goes and she does that same sort of feeling of the whole of a man with JR. And that's why JR really bonded with Sandy, because there was a difference between Sandy and Zaina. And I think the difference is the way it felt authentic, because I think it really is Sandy. Sandy has a history of doing this. And what we noticed about Zaina is, I think Zaina can turn it on and turn it off. Zaina can turn it on and turn it off. And we saw her turn it on and turn it off with Scotty. Once she started to see what a fool Scotty was, Zaina had the ability to immediately turn it off. You see, but when Sandy saw what a fool that Nick is, guess what she couldn't do? She couldn't turn it off, because it's really a part of her. It's a part of her she actually needs to heal. So I'm not even saying that Zaina is a bad person. She probably has an ability to have more boundaries than Sandy does. And I think JR knows that, because I think what JR wants is, he does like the part of Sandy that didn't have as many boundaries. He liked the free flowing of her. He liked the fact that she was willing to give of herself so much more. That's what JR likes. JR likes that open woman, right? But JR also doesn't trust that woman. You see, Zaina is a lot more controlled. She's more controlled in her emotions. She's more controlled in the way that she offers up her feelings. She's way more in control. And I think JR knows that. He has seen Zaina turn it on and turn it off. Like he said when they met up, he goes, oh, here comes petty Zaina. Zaina can be petty. See, what petty means is, you know what? I can dish it. I can dish it. When I get to a certain point, I can be petty. See, and that's, I think, what the difference is with JR. But JR was turned on by the fact that Sandy was like an open spigot. That's why Sandy was having such a hard time when Nick was coming to the apartment and really bombarding her. She was getting flustered. She was getting flooded, because she doesn't know how to push away. She doesn't know how to draw the boundaries. She doesn't know how to say no. And what she liked about being with JR is because he's already closed off emotionally, right? In some ways, it was more of a safe space for her. That's what I think. When you look at the way that JR treated Sandy, in a lot of ways, he treated her way better than he treated Zaina. I'm going to say it. He gave Sandy a lot of compliments all the time. He smiled a lot with Sandy. When you saw them get back together with Zaina, he didn't smile a lot. In fact, when they reunited for the first time, he didn't even grab Zaina's hand. He didn't hug her. When he was with Sandy, he could never stop touching her. He could never stop giving her compliments. I know he complimented Zaina here and there, but I saw the big difference, y'all. I saw the big difference, the way JR was interacting with Sandy versus the way he interacts with Zaina. You know, before they got back together, Sandy told JR, hey, when I was with Zaina, I told her she has nothing to worry about between you and me, and that I was really preparing you for her. And so in that moment, JR said, thank you. He said, thank you, because in one way, he didn't want Sandy to alarm Zaina and mess up any possibility he had with Zaina. But in the other way, he was a little bit offended by it, because he was like, well, wait a minute. If you're going to downplay our relationship to Zaina, does that mean it was all fake? It wasn't real? You see, once again, Sandy gave to Zaina. Sandy spared Zaina's feelings, even though Sandy knows there was a real connection. And that's the difference between her and JR. You see, JR didn't spare Nick's feelings. He wanted to tell Nick the truth because I think he really does want to be with Sandy in a lot of ways. He caught feelings. He definitely caught feelings. And what he was hurt by was the fact that Sandy didn't tell Zaina the same thing, but yet he was also happy about it. Sandy is saying, you know what? She hears these apologies from Nick. Nick says he's sorry for these emotional outbursts. He's going to do better. But then he just keeps on doing it over and over again. And she's tired of it. It's an emotional burden. And JR, the more she's talking about Nick and everything, the more JR is getting frustrated, talking about why are you bringing up his name in our conversation? This is our time. And the way that JR constantly refers to Sandy as, this is my wife, this is my trial wife, this is my wife. I mean, he must have called that woman wife so many times. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting that you're so comfortable calling Sandy your wife, but you can't even think, you at the moment, you couldn't even think of even marrying Zaina to even say, call her your wife, your possible wife. Zaina needs to leave JR because I'm going to tell you right now, JR is using Zaina as a placeholder till he can figure things out. And I'm going to tell you this, part of it is Zaina's fault. And I see a lot of women do this, right? They put so much pressure on what it would take to marry them that what a man will do is he'll say, well, I can't really meet all those things. So therefore, I'm going to postpone the marriage. I already know that JR is not prepared for marriage financially. He's even said it. He said he wants 3 to 4 kids and he wants to be able to provide for his family and his children. And he's not quite there yet. And I believe Zaina is the type of person where she wants a wedding, she wants a nice ring, she wants all these different things. And I don't think that JR was, even prior to this show, he was financially ready to take on that financial responsibility. He thinks he'll be ready in about 7 years when he can get his business up and going. But financially, he wants to be better prepared. But here's the problem with a lot of women. They have this, I want to get married, but they also have these monetary sort of markers of what they need in order to get married. They need expensive rings. They need expensive weddings. They need all these different things. So a man who's not financially prepared for marriage, all that's going to do is delay marriage even more. Because if he doesn't have the money for the wedding and all this fancy stuff that you want and the money for paying for the children, he may love you, but he's going to postpone the marriage. And that's how I look at Zaina. I think Zaina has this image of marriage, 2.3 kids, white picket fence, 2-car garage, 3-car garage, like this perfect family life. And she wants to be the perfect wife. And so when you see her do things for the men she's involved with, even including Scotty, it all feels like things just to get to the point where she'll get a proposal. And that's hard to trust in a man because you can kind of feel like you're being tricked. You can kind of feel like you're being manipulated because you're kind of wondering, is this who you'll really be forever? Or once you get married, will you be a different woman? Because you're so focused on getting married, but you're not focused really on getting to know me. There was something very interesting that when the couples got back together, Zaina all of a sudden started trying to do some things that she realized Sandy was doing for JR. Because Zaina realized that Sandy did capture JR's heart. And she realized that there was a possibility that JR was going to choose Sandy. And even though she wanted to pretend like she didn't think it was, she did. Because all of a sudden she started trying to say, oh, this is going to bring us so much closer together. And now I'm so glad you were Sandy because it opened you up. But what I realized it did is also woke up Zaina. And one of the things that was very, very interesting that Zaina said is, I want to know more about you and your childhood and the way you grew up. And I thought, what? Why would you just now be getting to that conversation, Zaina? Why would you just now be getting to the conversation about, I really want to know who you are and how you grew up? Those are conversations you have in the very beginning of a relationship, not one that you've already been in for 3 years and you've been living together at that. What kind of couple are you, Zaina and JR? We saw the distance between them. I'm really wondering, is Zaina and JR, what type of couple are they? What type of couple are they? I mean, they live together, but this fact that you don't even know about his childhood, you never really asked these deep secrets about him, where some of this behavior came from. What were you talking about? And this is the part that I get from Zaina, that Zaina is Scotty called her that. Scotty called her resolution based, right? And that might be the good description of Zaina. Zaina is a type of person where she lays out a plan to get to the final destination. So even when she was arguing with Scotty, and Scotty's really emotional too, Zaina's the type of person who is, let's just get to the solution so we can get to the end of this story. And that's how Zaina is in marriage. Let's just get to the end of the story, which is marriage. I don't need to worry about all that other stuff about who you are, JR, what makes you happy, us really bonding. And I think that's the part of Zaina that JR does not trust and does not like. And that's the part that he liked about Sandy, because he could open up to Sandy, because Sandy was really interested in knowing the heart, because that's who Sandy is. Sandy tends to people's hearts somewhat too much, somewhat too much. And Zaina doesn't appeal to the heart. She doesn't appeal to the heart at all. I'm going to tell you that. She tries to appeal to a man just so she can be a wife. And it doesn't come off genuine. When JR and Sandy were breaking up and Sandy was like, are you going to cry when we break up? JR was like, wouldn't that be weird? I do feel like I want to cry, but that would be weird if I cry over you. And I didn't even cry when I broke up with Zaina. That tells it all. Once Zaina watches back this show, she's got to realize that she needs to go ahead and leave JR, because JR is going to eventually figure it out that she's just a placeholder. She was a placeholder for him to emotionally heal. She was a safe space because what he knew was she wasn't going to cheat on him. And the reason why she wouldn't cheat on him is because she's too busy focused on trying to be the best dutiful wife. And she knows that a dutiful wife doesn't cheat. So there'd be no way she'd cheat, but she's doing it to get to the end, which is to become a wife. And it doesn't feel authentic. Not at all. And then when you hear Sandy, you hear more about Sandy talking about the problems with Nick. And she was like, I felt neglected by you, right? And then now all of a sudden I feel like you were love bombing me. We started to hear more about the dynamics of why Sandy didn't even want to marry Nick, because I kept wondering why she didn't want to marry him. We knew once we saw the emotional outburst that that was a big part of it. But we also find out that because Nick also kind of operates in his own world, he does what he wants to do. And what Sandy was saying is she felt emotionally neglected. Well, you're going to feel emotionally neglected from a person who's an emotional wreck, because a person who is an emotional wreck, all they actually have to do is tend to their feelings. They have very little capacity to tend to the feelings of you. And I think the reason why Nick really fell apart was because Sandy has been what fed him. You see, Nick's an emotional wreck. He feeds off of Sandy to keep him grounded. When that little addiction he has to Sandy was gone, he lost it. He lost it. And he really does need Sandy in his life, because Sandy is the only thing that grounds him. But what Sandy is saying is, what about a person who's going to ground me? Why do I always have to be in charge of you? And that is the selfishness of Nick. His personality is so emotionally strong. What it does is it snuffs out the room, so there's no emotional space for anyone else. Sandy doesn't even have any room to have an emotional breakdown because Nick takes up all the room. But when she was over there with JR, there was room for her to cry. But then what would happen is when she would cry with JR got jealous that she was crying over Nick. So there was really no safe space over there with JR either, because JR is another version of Nick. He's not as bad as Nick, but he's another version. And that's what I was saying. Sandy is showing up in the relationship with Nick the same way she's showing up in JR. And JR liked about Sandy the same thing Nick liked about Sandy, was that she becomes this emotional sponge. She takes on the emotions of everyone that she's with, which leaves her no room for herself. Sandy needs to leave, but not only JR, she needs to leave Nick, both of them. I mean, in the end, JR even told Zaina that he's worried about, does she love him more than he loves her? And I don't know if it's really about love. I think, does she want to get married more than he wants to get married? Yeah, I think that's more about that. Zaina's focused, and maybe it comes off as love. Maybe it looks like it's like she loves him more, but what she really is she's just more focused on marriage. And Zaina's able to do just like Scotty said. She is results based, which means let me do what I need to do in order to get where I need to go. And if that is making you think that I love you more than you love me, then that's what I'll do. Because if that's what it takes for me to get to my end goal, then that is what I'll do. you know. But when I see him with Zaina, the way he touches Zaina, he sort of pets her. It's so different than the way he caressed Sandy. He caressed Sandy. He touches and pets Zaina, but he caressed Sandy. It is quite a bit different. Even in the end, I almost felt like JR's smiles with Zaina were just fake. That I think he's been shown something different with Sandy, and I don't think he's gonna be the same. Um, I don't necessarily think that Sandy is gonna choose JR because I think what Sandy did with JR was that she kind of made him believe that he was the one. But what JR didn't realize is that's just who Sandy is, right? But do I think that Sandy is willing to leave Nick over JR? I don't think so. The best bet is for Sandy not to be with either one of them. But I think the time that JR spent with Sandy has changed his mind, has changed his perspective. And I don't know if he's gonna propose to Zaina. I don't know if he'll even go through with a marriage for Zaina. But I tell you this, um, if they got engaged, if they got married, down the line, I see some cheating in store. And this time the cheating would be with JR with other women. Because no matter what JR tells me, I see the hunger he has for the type of woman that Sandy was. And Zaina's not that person. Zaina is definitely more of, let me do what I gotta do to get what I want. But that doesn't mean that she's gonna keep doing it after she gets what she wants. It's not really part of her soul. I can actually start to see it. You know, in the end, Zaina went out and got all these balloons, and she got these balloons for his birthday, and she brought the balloons home. And because now what she's doing is she's trying to give JR gifts. She gives him all this Philly gear, all this stuff for Philadelphia Eagles, a barbecue grill kit. Then she goes out and gets all these balloons for a happy early birthday. It wasn't even his birthday. It's all performative. It was an early birthday. But guess where the part where JR really clues in to really who Zaina is? He said, "Oh, did you give me 36 balloons to represent my 36 years?" And you know what she said? "Oh, no, don't count them though." You see, what JR was looking for was that part that is really thoughtful, right? That real thoughtful part that came from the heart. Like, I got you 36 balloons to represent 36 years. And Zaina said, "No, I just did the basics. I got you balloons for your birthday, which is nice, but I didn't go that extra caring step. It's like a level deeper, right? It's the difference between giving a gift, but giving a thoughtful gift." And I'm telling you, I see it in Zaina. Zaina is not all the way thoughtful. She's more performative. But it doesn't mean that she's not a nice person. It doesn't mean that she's not going to make a nice mate for someone. I think that she will. But I think JR sees the difference between her and Sandy, and there is a difference. I mean, the blowout fight between Zaina and Scotty told you everything. Zaina walked up out of there. And the minute Scotty got a bad attitude and she started to see how he was gaslighting her and he was doing all things, she did the right thing. She left. She did the right thing. She left, and she did it very, very, very fast. I mean, the way Scotty came at her, blaming her for what JR had been saying about whether it was a hall pass or not. He attacks. Scotty is an attacker. Scotty is a narcissist. And it's really sad to see Aria going back over there to Scotty, because just like Aria's brother said was, I see a lot of Scotty in our dad. And that wasn't a compliment. That brother wasn't giving Scotty a compliment. Obviously, there's some history around the father. And what he was saying was, it's sad to see his sister choosing a man that's a lot like a father that neither of them really respected. And here's Aria going back to him. After experiencing all of this different type of guy with Caleb, she then goes back over to Scotty, and she's almost begging Scotty to be with her. But yet now all of a sudden Scotty's telling her that he don't want to be with her. Isn't this interesting? Scotty's the one that brought Arya to the ultimatum. He gave her an ultimatum. Okay, Scotty got dumped by by Zaina. And now all of a sudden, Arya is over here because everything didn't work out romantically with Scotty. She's over here begging for Scotty to still be with her. And now all of a sudden, Scotty says, ooh, I've got you in a tight spot. Because now we know that Caleb didn't want you romantically. Now I got you in a tight spot. So now what I can do is I can be mean to you, because Scotty is mean to Aria. He's mean. He always looks to chastise women. He tries to chastise Zaina. He tries to chastise Arya. He puts them down continuously. He's always trying to tell them what's wrong with them. Always. He doesn't take any responsibility of what's wrong with him. He doesn't take any ownership. He constantly is picking on them, telling them what's wrong with them. And when Arya was in that relationship with Caleb, the trial marriage, for once she had a chance to realize what it's like to have someone that pours into you, who lifts you up, who builds you up, and someone that doesn't tear you down. But yet here she is going right back over here with Scotty. Ugh, why, Arya? Why? when Zaina was with when Zaina was with Scotty, and Scotty was trying to insinuate that Zaina and JR were still talking, Zaina said, you know what? Me and JR, we've completely separated. We completely detached. Which is so interesting. Here you are, this couple in love, this man you so-called want to marry, and you were so readily available to detach. You know why she detached so easily from JR? Because in the moment, she thought, ooh, if I can go over here and convince Scotty to marry me, I can still get what I want. That's why she was so quick to tell her family that if JR said yes, I might say no to him. Because what she thought was she had another fish on the hook in Scotty. She's like, here is Scotty, another person that wants to be married. I want to be married. The two of us can just go ahead and get married. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do all these white things for Scotty to get Scotty to want to marry me too. So she was already looking to go ahead and get from Scotty what she really wanted, which was marriage. But once she found out that Scotty was batshit crazy and she realized that wasn't going to work out, now she's running back over here to JR and going back into her performance of trying to do all these nice things so JR will want to be with her. Scotty's competitive. Even when they were playing that beer pong, game or whatever, where they were doing the balls, he did not like when Zaina was beating him. He did not like when Zaina was beating him. Remember, on the basketball court, he did not like Zaina beating him. Zaina is focused. She's a very focused woman. When she was playing those games, when she was playing basketball, Zaina likes to win too. And she's right now on this show, she's trying to win a husband no matter what. No matter what. If I were a man, I could almost see how they could not trust Zaina, because Zaina is she's kind of calculated. She kind of does things to do what she needs to do to get to the end. But is it really a part of her heart? But it didn't matter with Scotty, because Scotty is he's gaslighting. He doesn't trust women. He's belittling. He attacks women. He starts attacking her over going to the bathroom with her phone. He starts, oh, at 1:30 in the morning, you're going and texting on your phone and all these other kind of things. And Zaina was mad that he was accusing her of things that she said was not right. But at least she saw his true colors. She saw her true colors. And the minute she left, all he did was come back and start doing these same things to Arya. The same exact things. When they get back, when Arya and Scotty get back, Arya's like, I want to do some more fun moments, some more lighthearted moments, because all they do is argue. You could tell all they do is argue. Oh, we both work so much, we don't have time for fun. And she said, well, one thing I did like about you, Scotty, is that, you used to plan dates. And Scotty's asking Arya, well, were you physically connected to Caleb? Or was he physically connected to you? And Arya said, yeah, I think he was physically connected um, to me, but I wasn't physically connected to him. I don't know if he was physically connected to you, Arya. I hate to tell you, I don't think Caleb was. I think Caleb liked a break from you, because I think Caleb is in the same type of relationship that Mariah is emotionally draining, and you became a reprieve from that, because you don't have as much emotion. It's almost like if all these couples paired up with they're paired currently with their opposites, but then when they got paired up with someone that was more similar to them, they liked it. And what I think about Caleb is I think Caleb is physically attracted to Mariah more, but yet he was emotionally attracted to the part of Arya that was a little bit more independent, but not so emotionally open. That's why Arya didn't require a whole lot of touchy feeliness, because she didn't really need it herself. And the reason why she felt comfortable with Caleb is because Caleb didn't put pressure on her to have an a physical connection, because she's not good with it. But Scotty, who is a wounded person, needs a lot of that. He needs a lot of physical touch. And so the problem with Arya is that because she's not good with that, Scotty points it out all the time and puts her down about it. But when she was with Caleb, he didn't give her a hard time about it because he didn't need it. And that's why Mariah over there complains about the same thing with Caleb. Mariah says she needs more hugs and kisses from Caleb, because Caleb doesn't do a lot of it. So you have Caleb together, who doesn't do a lot of touchy-feely stuff. You have Arya, who doesn't do a lot of touchy-feely stuff. So they felt safe with each other, that they could connect emotionally, but they didn't necessarily have to have the physical part because they like to connect emotionally. But when they go back to their respective partners, when they get back with their respective partners, they're drained emotionally because their other partners are so emotional. Mariah is way more emotional than Caleb, and she drains him. Scotty is emotional and he drains Arya. None of these couples should be together. Why don't they see this? The constant lecturing of Caleb to Arya was hard to watch. The constant him putting her down, and then to see her towards the end trying to convince him that she loves him and she wants to be with him. And now all of a Scotty scan, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. How can I be there for you when I'm not even convinced you're here for me? What a turnaround, Scotty. He's such a Jekyll and Hyde. He's such a Jekyll and Hyde, but it's the narcissist of him that makes him take these positions, because in the end, he's there just to hurt people. He likes to hurt people and grind a knife into them and put them down. And when he realized that the relationship with Caleb and Arya wasn't going to work, he was like, now I got you, Arya. Now I can just squeeze you for everything you are and make you feel even worse. And here is Arya running over there back to him, trying to convince him to propose to her. Ugh. It's really, really hard to watch, y'all. Really, really hard to watch. I hope none of these people say yes to each other. I hope they do. I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because they all feel like they're all sort of codependent on each other. It's some real psychological mumbo jumbo crazy stuff going on. They all need therapy to figure out why they shouldn't be with each other. They may not even know why they shouldn't be with each other, but they need to figure it out, because they're picking partners the wrong way. Every single one of these persons on this show has an issue that they need to work through before they can be in a healthy relationship. Every single one of it. So for right now, they all need to say no. They all need to say no and say goodbye to each other if they really want to have a chance at a healthy relationship. But anyway, that's all I got, y'all. That's all I got. I will talk to y'all later. Bye.